What is your favorite well-being practice and how do you do it?
You know, what I've found works for me is a menu, kind of a stable of things. I use meditation, I walk in nature, run in nature, I dance, I do yoga, I cook, I like to spend time with my kids. I mean, I try to, wake up in the morning and feel, which of these do I need today? Which of those positive experiences my body and mind most craving? And just having the lens of I need to take care of myself at that level has been really important to me. I've very much been a student of my own work, and my work taught me that I needed more than work in my life. So,
we as human beings are really born very vital with an instinct for thriving. A lot of our task is to, in some ways, simplify how hard we make things and to come back into our bodies in terms of breath and movement and relationship. So that may sound a little bit vague. So I think some of the things that I try to do on a daily basis are to be present. In this moment, I'm very present being here with everybody and thinking and generating ideas, but also really being present to what I'm feeling in my body and kind of listening to, does that feel healthy? Does that feel like it's good for others? Because I think our bodies actually want to tell us what's going on, but often our culture makes it hard to hear. Those of us that are fortunate enough and can walk out our door to take a breath and to listen to the birds, and I noticed all the daffodils were out, and just doing that was so replenishing and made me come back into the moment and into what's real and out of my head, because I think so. Another thing that embodied living does is I work a lot with writing, creative writing, to find out what are the stories that we tell ourselves and how can we actually write different stories. Because I think the power of words, one of the things that I say is the semantic becomes the somatic. So put much more simply, what we tell ourselves, our body believes. And so I'm careful about the stories that I can make up and whether believing them or not. And so writing has always helped me clarify some of that or disentangle it. So I think breathing, moving, nature, writing, and then obviously relationship. There's so many of you that are here that part of why I want to be here is positive relationship is so fundamental to a sense of well-being for me. I thrive most with other people who are engaged and creative. That doesn't have to mean happy. I think oftentimes I have felt most joined in sadness and in sorrow by the company of others.
Well, from my own orientation that, as I mentioned, is specific to cardiovascular disease and more generally to other chronic conditions, nutrition is probably the single most important factor, and watching what we eat, how much, where it comes from are very important factors. Being physically active is a close second, and avoiding tobacco smoke is another, as a smoker or being exposed to secondhand smoke. In the area of nutrition, one of the most important factors that's beginning to get a lot of attention is the need to reduce the sodium content in our food supply. That has tremendous potential to prevent high blood pressure and consequent heart attacks and strokes.
I realize I don't know it all. I've made a lot of bad choices. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life because I didn't always pay attention to the things that were right there to help me make right decisions and wise choices. And what I learned is that you can make choices, but you can't choose the consequences, and the consequences are long-lasting and life-changing. And if you want to have peace in your life, if you want to have well-being in your life, then you have to think about those things that are going to cause you to make wise decisions and wise choices. Sometimes I say, well, I may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but the other thing I think that helps me in terms of being successful in my work and in doing what I do is, one, because I don't compare myself to other people. I have been made uniquely for the purpose of being here at this particular time. Nobody else can do what I'm doing. So when I stop comparing myself to other people and what they do, what they've achieved, you know, however many letters they may have behind their name or whatever they've accomplished, and I just focus on what it is I'm supposed to do today, I call that good success. So that's how I try to live my life on a daily basis. And then I try to treat people well. We all have issues. Every single one of us in this world has an insecurity. We may have many insecurities. And so as a result of that, it makes me think I need to look at people with great compassion, and instead of judging them, try to understand where they're coming from. My heart is always to try to do what's best for the other person. And then I think the other part that leads to success is esteeming others better than myself. I think much about other people and how I can help them have the best life that they can have. And if my coming through their life improves the quality of their life, then I've accomplished my goal just for that day.
I came up with the concept of appreciative intelligence, which is about reframing to see new possibilities. So when I talk about the practice you mentioned, for me it is about reframing. So I have made a challenge that every day at least I will try to find one thing which I began perceiving as something difficult, impossible to change. I started with a negative attitude towards that and felt that it's impossible to solve. I've made it a personal challenge and a commitment that I would look at least one thing in a day where I would look at that problem differently and see it in a positive light. And I am happy to report that at least in half of the cases I am able to come up with a better outcome because I looked at the problem in a different way. I reframed and saw it as a new possibility. So my practice is really more on a cognitive basis. It's not so much anything physical, but reframing how I look at things.
I try to spend time with hopeful people, and I try to spend time with kids. My son is 6. He's at a perfect age to just hang out and talk about the future. He's constantly nexting. Next, Daddy, we'll do this, and next week we'll do that, and when's our next vacation? So that kind of pulls me into the future, but then I'm surrounded by hopeful people at work and in my life, and that helps me really keep my hope up and move towards my well-being. So that's my biggest strategy, is surrounding myself intentionally with hopeful people who are also committed to their well-being, and then their practices seem to rub off on me.
Lovely.
The practice I try to cultivate myself is meditation. Meditation can be a tool to achieve what I was talking about earlier, which is greater awareness of the way your mind kind of naturally, automatically works, as a way of liberating yourself from some aspects of the way your mind naturally works. So I think meditation as a tool of self-awareness can be very helpful, but it takes work. There's not like a miracle transformation that's going to last forever. You got to do it every day. Well, I happen to have stumbled onto the Vipassana tradition, which is a kind of a mindfulness meditation that involves a lot of it. Usually you start out by paying attention to the breath and so on. Well, I happen to have stumbled onto the Vipassana tradition, which is a kind of a mindfulness meditation that involves a lot of it. Usually you start out by paying attention to the breath and so on. Vipassana focuses a lot on self-awareness, on the awareness of your mind, and that's one thing I like about it.
I kind of call them meditation in the sense that my well-being practice is really paying attention as much as I can in the moment to what's going on in my own heart and mind, as well as what's going on in your heart and mind and those around me. So it's really a quality of presence. So it's presence moment to moment, but also relationships. My well-being comes from being awake in relationships and cultivating intimacy.
Deep listening. And so when we meditate, that's a kind of deep listening to ourselves, our inner selves. But I think also listening to each other and listening to nature and listening to life itself. And if we can find ways to put ourselves in a frame of mind where we're really listening, then I think it goes a long ways towards promoting well-being.
What I do is that when I get up and I do my practice, my fundamental practice in the morning is that I first sit. I sit from anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, and it's, you know, people will call that meditation, but really it's attention training, and it's a time where I can just really settle in myself and be very quiet and be a deep listener. Then from there, what I do is that I get up and I take a staff, which is called a jo in Japanese. I take a staff and then I'll walk for about 40 minutes to an hour. So that's also basically good for my body, but I'm walking in a centered way. I practice centering inside of my walk. And at the very end of that, I take the jo and I do what is called a kata. And a kata is a form. It's a 31 movement form. And at the beginning of the kata, I say, I say my commitment, my overall commitment. In other words, what type of human being inside of the community am I trying to be? And then I'll also say a very, very specific commitment. With a jo, what I would do is I'd be standing with a staff. You imagine a staff like a broomstick or something, but it's usually made of maple or oak, Japanese oak or Japanese maple. And I would hold it like this. This is like air jo, okay? And I'll do maybe the first 8 or 9 moves, okay? So there would be a thrust, and then a block, and then a thrust, and then a block. So now as I'm doing this, I'm not just doing the moves, performing the moves, I'm attending to, am I centered? Am I balanced along my length, width, and depth? Am I moving from my center of gravity? So it would be a thrust, a block, a thrust, a block, and then turning it out, cut, and then another cut. And then from there I'd pivot and go in this direction. So that's about the first 7 or 8 moves in which I would do that.
Model well-being myself as a goal. I'm certainly not perfect in doing that, but my goal is to put into practice these notions around positive emotion, positive relationship, engaging others, and facilitating the well-being of other people. But in my own leadership, it's my belief that it starts with you. So my goal is to walk the talk with this and to learn myself and to grow around the various dimensions of well-being.
My view of well-being is it's something you should worry about every day. It's something that brings both together the need to be well and the need to do it in the right way. One thing that I do is I like to walk. So I take every opportunity I have to walk on campus, to meetings, and also once a year I go walk to the bottom of the Grand Canyon with a group of friends, spend 3 or 4 nights down there and walk out. So to me, well-being is something that should happen every day, but then there should be some specific thing that you do on some periodic basis to take care of yourself.
Good.
I am a huge fan of a process called Be Peace, which is a combination of heart math and nonviolent communication. It is a really, the whole idea is, it's similar to meditation, but the idea is for you to really get in touch with your heart and to feel a positive emotion and then to act from a place that is that positive emotion. And the nonviolent communication is all about connecting with your universal needs that all of us can relate to. And if you connect with someone on the level of a universal need, you're really connecting on a deep level. So it's called Be Peace. I find it really powerful.
My favorite well-being practice is sitting and playing the piano. So I find it to be a very wonderful way to be in a moment and in flow, where nothing else is impinging and you're only thinking about what you're doing in that moment. And it gives you a space to think about other things in a different way.
I have lots of ways I do it. Depends on my mood. I really like being still when I feel anxiety. I really like being in nature when I feel energetic. And I love reading spiritual literature. And there are times when I really love to talk to people who are going to tell me the truth about what they're hearing. So, combination of things.
Physical exercise is what I tend to lean towards to bump up my well-being. So whether it's to go for a run or to go work out in the gym or to take an exercise class or yoga, something physical definitely gets my well-being going.
I would say that probably the number one mood booster for my well-being is absolutely essential physical exercise every day, weightlifting. Greek mentality, ancient Greek mentality, so mind and body every day, reading and then exercising, serious, hardcore weightlifting.
Wow. My most consistent well-being practice is mindful walking, and that just gives me a chance to reflect on the day and also really just get my body moving, because I believe in mind-body alignment, and so that gives me the opportunity to kind of shut everything out from the day and get in touch with how and get my mind and body congruent. It's different for me on different days. Sometimes it's more being more attentive to my breath. Other days it's being more attentive to the way I'm connected to the ground. And other times it's just kind of letting my mind, just letting go. So I kind of use it in different ways.
When I'm alone, it is that I take in nature and I enjoy that and let it nourish me, and I stay in close touch with my adorable granddaughter, who gives me a whole new meaning for life.